All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the world of operations management. We're going to be pulling some really interesting stuff from Operations Management 14.pdf to, help all of us really understand how companies kind of get ahead by managing their operations the right way. We'll be talking about things like quality, efficiency, how companies keep their customers happy. I have to admit, operations management doesn't exactly sound like the most exciting thing in the world, but
Yeah, yeah,
I
sometimes.
have a feeling we're going to uncover some pretty cool stuff here.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of just take for granted all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes to get a product to a consumer.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's start with the basics. What exactly is operations management?
Well, think of it this way. It's about managing the entire system that transforms inputs into outputs. So, like in a kitchen, you have ingredients coming in, they get prepped, chopped, cooked, and then bam, out comes delicious food.
Got it. So, in the business world, those ingredients would be things like raw materials, labor, maybe information, and then the meal would be the company's finished product or service. Okay, that makes sense. But how does a company actually make those systems work efficiently?
Well, that's where the operations manager comes in. They're like the head chef. Right, they get to orchestrate everything, designing the systems, making sure everything's running smoothly, constantly looking for ways to, improve things. So just like a well-run kitchen, efficient operations are key to making sure that high-quality products and services get to the customer quickly and, they're consistent.
Makes sense. And I imagine in today's world, information and technology play a pretty big role.
Oh, absolutely. You can kind of think of information like the nervous system of a modern company's operations.
Yeah.
Managers are constantly using data to make decisions about everything, from how much to produce to how to manage resources. And that brings us to big data, which is basically like this massive amount of data that companies are collecting these days.
Right, big data. It's one of those buzzwords you hear everywhere these days. But what does it actually mean for businesses and how does it, affect us as consumers?
Well, think about all the data that's generated every single day, right? Your online purchases, your browsing history, your social media interactions. It's a lot.
Hmm.
And companies can analyze all this data to spot trends and to, predict what customers are going to want and even personalize marketing just for you. It's like they have a crystal ball, to make smarter business decisions.
Ah, okay. So that's why I keep getting those personalized ads on social media. That's big data in action. But, isn't that kind of a little invasive?
It can be, yeah. And that's why companies really need to be careful about data privacy and security.
Yeah.
It's a powerful tool, but they have a responsibility to use it ethically.
Hmm.
But big data isn't just about marketing. It also impacts how companies design their operations to be more responsive to what customers want. They can make better products now.
Okay. And what are customers typically looking for these days?
Well, studies show that generally speaking, people want lower prices, they want higher quality products, they want fast service, and they want to be able to customize things to their liking.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everyone loves a good deal and, we all want things fast. But I wonder if those priorities are kind of shifting as people become more aware of things like, sustainability and ethical sourcing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It's like a complex equation that companies have to figure out. They have to balance all these customer desires with, practical considerations like production costs and efficiency.
Absolutely. Because if a company can't produce things efficiently, they can't offer those competitive prices that everyone loves or even, keep up with demand. So how does a company actually design its operations to be more responsive and efficient? Is it just as simple as picking the right layout for their factory or their office space?
Well, it's definitely a factor. Like the way a company arranges its workspace, we call this facilities layout, can make a huge difference in how efficient they are. Think about like a classic assembly line. That's a great example of what we call product layout, which is super effective when you need to produce, large quantities of the same product really quickly, like, cars or smartphones.
Right. So if I wanted a custom-made suit, an assembly line probably wouldn't be the most efficient setup.
Probably not, no.
Yeah.
You'd probably want to go to a tailor, who uses what we call a process layout, where the workstations aren't stuck in one sequence. So this allows for more flexibility and customization, which is perfect for businesses that cater to, unique needs.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But what about when you're building something huge, like, a skyscraper?
Ah, well, that's when you'd use what's called the fixed position layout. So the product, in this case, the skyscraper, stays in one place. And all the materials and workers, come to it. It's all about, orchestrating all the different teams and resources efficiently around that central location.
So it sounds like the type of layout really depends on what a company is producing and how they need to operate. But it's
Right.
not just about the physical space, right? I'd imagine technology plays a big role in making these systems more adaptable.
Oh, absolutely. One technique that helps companies be more flexible is called flexible manufacturing. It's all about being able to switch between producing different products, quickly and cost effectively. So think about a company like Nike. They use flexible manufacturing to offer tons of customized shoe designs. People can choose their own colors, materials. They can even add like personal touches.
That's so cool. So instead of having a whole separate production line for each design, they have a more like modular system that can be easily reconfigured.
Exactly, yeah. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about, customers wanting quick service and being able to customize things. Flexible manufacturing lets companies produce, a bigger range of products in smaller batches so they can cut down wait times and keep up with this growing demand for, personalized stuff.
That's really fascinating. So they're finding ways to be both efficient and responsive to what customers are asking for. It seems like operations management is all about finding that balance, but it's also about managing resources effectively, right? And I'm thinking specifically about inventory, like how much stuff a company keeps on hand.
Yeah, you've hit on a really key point there. Inventory management, it's crucial. And one approach that's become super popular lately is just-in-time inventory. We call it JIT for short.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. JIT dot another acronym. Break it down for me. What's the main idea behind it?
So the basic idea is that you have parts and materials arriving at the factory, right when they're needed. This way you don't need these huge warehouses, stockpiles of inventory just sitting around. It's about making the flow of materials leaner and cutting down on waste.
So it's like ordering groceries online for same-day delivery, right? You only get what you need when you need it. But wouldn't that make companies super vulnerable to disruptions? Like, we saw during the pandemic with those global supply chains getting like totally thrown into chaos.
Yeah, that's a great point. JIT can be vulnerable to disruptions. Like, remember that whole semiconductor shortage? I mean, it's a tiny component, but it had a massive impact on car manufacturing, right?
Yeah.
Because these companies operate on super tight timelines with JIT. We saw factories shutting down, delays in getting new cars, and it really just highlighted how interconnected and kind of fragile global supply chains can be.
Yeah. Wow, that's a perfect example. It really shows how a disruption in one part of the world can have these ripple effects everywhere else. It kind of makes you appreciate just how complicated it is to manage operations on a global scale. But let's bring it back to the people involved for a minute. It's not all systems and processes, right? I mean, people play a huge role in all of this too.
Absolutely. And one way that companies are empowering their employees these days is through self-managed work teams.
Mm,
So these teams, they have a lot more autonomy and responsibility.
yeah.
Instead of having a manager, breathing down their neck for every little thing,
Mm.
they get to make decisions and solve problems on their own.
So it's about trusting employees to, take ownership and be more proactive. What are some of the benefits of that kind of approach?
Well, self-managed teams are often more motivated and engaged,
Yeah.
because they feel more ownership.
Yeah.
And that leads to higher productivity and often better solutions because they're the ones, closest to the work, so they can spot areas for improvement that a manager might miss. Plus, with fewer layers of management, companies can, streamline their decision-making process and, ultimately save money.
Interesting. Have you ever worked on a self-managed team before?
Yeah, I have. It was a fantastic experience. And the level of trust and collaboration was just incredible. We could brainstorm, we could try new things without having to wait for, approvals from higher ups. It really felt like we were all truly invested in, the team's success.
That's great to hear. It sounds like a win-win. Employees feel more empowered and the company benefits from their, increased motivation and their creativity. But are there ever situations where a company needs to take a more like radical approach to improving their operations? What if they're, really stuck in a rut and need to kind of shake things up in a big way?
In those cases, they might consider something called process reengineering. It's basically rethinking and redesigning, like from the ground up, their core processes so they can achieve, some pretty dramatic improvements. It's not about little tweaks. It's about looking at the big picture and figuring out how can we get rid of inefficiencies? How can we make the whole workflow more streamlined? That kind of thinking.
Okay, process reengineering. That sounds pretty intense. Can you give me an example of what that might look like in the real world?
Okay, imagine a bank that's, They're having a hard time with their loan application process. Customers are complaining about long wait times, tons of paperwork. So through process reengineering, they could completely revamp that whole system. They could use technology to automate tasks, speed up approvals, and basically create a much smoother experience for everyone.
So it's like stepping back and asking, how can we do this better? What steps are unnecessary? How can we use technology to, simplify things and make them faster? Have you seen any like real world examples of this yourself as a consumer?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Think about companies like Amazon and Netflix. I mean, they've completely changed their industries by, rethinking those traditional business models and, really embracing digital technologies. Amazon, with its one-click ordering and, that vast delivery network, they've made online shopping incredibly convenient. And Netflix, with, its streaming service, it's transformed how we all consume entertainment, right? Those are like prime examples of successful process reengineering.
Those are fantastic examples. It's really amazing how companies can achieve, such dramatic results just by kind of taking a step back and questioning how things have always been done. But, as we've talked about throughout this deep dive, it's not just about technology and processes, it's also about the people who are involved. And, sometimes these big changes can have a pretty big impact on employees.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And that's a really crucial aspect that we need to address before we move on. Achieving all these improvements, whether it's through increased efficiency, streamlined processes, or, even revolutionary reengineering, it often requires a shift in thinking at all levels of a company. And it's really important to manage those transitions carefully, considering the impact it might have on employees.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point to end on as we wrap up part one of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore.
Welcome back to our deep dive into operations management. As we were just discussing, while efficiency is really important for any business, it's also super important to think about how these changes impact the people who are actually, making it all happen, the employees.
Yeah, because pushing for efficiency without really thinking about that human factor, it can lead to, problems down the road. It's like, what's that saying? You can't squeeze blood from a stone. Like you can only push people so far before they burn out.
Right, exactly. Sustainable efficiency. It's all about finding that balance between, getting the most output, but also creating a work environment where people feel, valued and motivated to actually contribute their best. It's not about just working harder, it's about working smarter.
So how do companies kind of, walk that tightrope? How can they implement these changes without creating a culture of, like fear and stress?
Well, I think open and honest communication is really key. When management is upfront about, why they're making changes and how it might affect employees, it helps build trust and, reduces anxiety.
Yeah, it's like being on a roller coaster,
Yeah.
If you know what twists and turns are coming, it's a lot less scary than being in the dark. Like transparency makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. When employees understand, the why behind a change, they're way more likely to, embrace it and actually contribute to making it successful.
Okay.
But communication is just, it's just one part of it.
Yeah.
Companies also need to invest in training and development, right? To help their employees adapt to these new ways of working.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like, giving someone a new tool, you got to show them how to use it properly, especially in today's world with technology constantly changing. Ongoing training is it's crucial.
Yeah, exactly. And it shows employees, hey, we value your contributions, we're invested in your growth, and that can really boost morale and create a much more, positive work environment. And speaking of positive reinforcement, let's not forget about celebrating successes along the way.
Oh, yeah. Recognizing and rewarding achievements, both big and small, it can be a huge motivator. It shows employees that their hard work is appreciated and, it encourages them to keep striving for improvement.
Absolutely. It's about creating that culture of continuous improvement where everyone feels like they're, part of something bigger than themselves. And this kind of brings us back to the idea of those self-managed work teams. When you give people that autonomy and ownership, they're much more likely to be, innovative and find creative solutions to challenges.
Right. It's like, what is it? Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Empowering employees to take ownership, it can have this ripple effect throughout the whole organization.
Exactly. It can lead to a more, engaged and adaptable workforce, which is like essential in today's, fast-paced business world. But let's Let's kind of shift gears a little bit here and talk about another really important aspect of operations management, which is, managing the flow of materials and information within a company.
Hmm.
This is where the concept of a value chain comes in.
Okay, value chain. What exactly does that refer to?
So, imagine it as a series of activities all linked together that a company performs to, to create and deliver value to its customers. It starts with raw materials and ends with the finished product, in the customer's hands.
So, like, it's kind of like a journey that a product takes from start to finish, and with each step, adding value along the way.
Exactly. And managing this whole journey efficiently, it's critical for any company to be successful. They got to make sure each step in that value chain is, optimized and that information's flowing smoothly between departments.
That makes sense. But, in today's like globalized world, value chains can be, unbelievably complex. Products might be designed in one country, manufactured in another, and then, sold all over the world. How do companies even manage that level of complexity?
It's a huge challenge for sure. Companies have to have, really strong supply chain management systems in place to, track materials, coordinate all the logistics, and make sure everything's running smoothly. And they need to be adaptable too, able to respond quickly when, unexpected things happen, like, disruptions in transportation or if customer demand suddenly changes.
I bet technology plays a pretty big role in managing these global supply chains.
Oh, absolutely. Companies are using all kinds of, sophisticated software these days to track inventory, you know, monitor shipments, communicate with their suppliers, all in real time. And data analytics is becoming super important too. It lets companies, predict demand, optimize their shipping routes, and even, spot potential bottlenecks before they become a problem.
It's just amazing how technology is, transforming how businesses operate, making them so much more like efficient and responsive than ever before. But, as we've been talking about, there's always that human element to consider. What are some of the challenges that companies face when they're managing a global workforce?
One of the biggest ones is definitely, managing cultural differences.
Hmm.
Companies really need to be aware of like different customs, communication styles, even just different work ethics that exist in, different parts of the world.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's easy to overlook those kind of nuances when you're dealing with people from, all different backgrounds. What are some strategies that companies can use to kind of bridge those cultural divides?
Well, cross-cultural training is like essential. Companies need to, educate their employees about the different cultures they'll be working with and give them the tools they need to, to communicate effectively. Building strong relationships with, local partners and suppliers is really important too. They can offer valuable insights and help, navigate those cultural differences.
Those are some great tips. Sounds like successful global operations management requires, a mix of technical expertise, cultural sensitivity, and, just really strong communication skills.
Yeah, you got it. It's a complex field, constantly changing, but when it's done well, it can be, this powerful engine for growth and innovation.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from, the basics of operations management to the crazy complexity of managing these global supply chains and, a really diverse workforce. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, which is that, that increasing focus on sustainability and ethical practices in business. How are these considerations, impacting the world of operations management?
It's a major shift that's affecting, pretty much every aspect of the field.
Yeah.
Companies are realizing more and more that they have to be, responsible stewards of the environment and that their actions have, these social and ethical implications.
Right. It's not just about, maximizing profits anymore. It's about finding ways to do business that benefit, both the company and the world around it.
Exactly. And this is leading to, some pretty exciting innovations in operations management. Companies are figuring out ways to, reduce their environmental impact. They're using more sustainable materials, cutting down on waste, implementing more energy efficient processes. They're also, really focusing on ethical sourcing, making sure that their suppliers are treating their workers fairly and, operating in an environmentally responsible way.
It sounds like a win-win situation. Companies can lower their costs, improve their brand image, and make a positive contribution to the world all at the same time.
Yeah, it's definitely a positive trend. And I think, we're only going to see more of this in the future. Consumers are demanding more sustainable and ethical products. And companies are, they're responding by integrating these considerations into, every aspect of their operations.
Welcome back. As we wrap up this deep dive into the world of operations management, I'm kind of amazed by how much we've actually covered. From like the basic nuts and bolts of how stuff gets made to those, super complex global supply chains and that human element that's woven through it all. It's a lot to process.
It really is, yeah. But there's one more piece of the puzzle I think we got to talk about to really understand, where operations management is heading in the future. And that's, well, the whole data analytics and artificial intelligence explosion that's happening.
Right, AI, it's like the hot topic everywhere right now. How is it, changing the game specifically for operations management?
Well, in a lot of ways, it's a total game changer.
Yeah.
Companies are now using AI to do things that were either, impossible before or would take like forever to do manually. Like imagine being able to predict exactly what customers are going to want or, optimizing delivery routes in real time as things change or even spotting a problem in a manufacturing process before it even happens.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. It sounds like AI could make, operations ridiculously efficient and like super proactive. Are there any, like real world examples of companies already using AI like this?
Oh, absolutely. Like, think about Amazon and Walmart. They're already using AI to manage those massive logistics networks they have, predicting what products are going to be in demand, where, and making sure they're, in the right place at the right time. And over in manufacturing, companies like Tesla, they're using AI to, fine tune their production lines, making them more efficient and way more adaptable to changes.
It's just mind-blowing to think about how quickly, this technology is evolving and like the potential it has to just totally revolutionize how businesses operate. But, it also brings up some questions about the future of, well, work itself. I mean, if AI can do so much, what's going to happen to all the human jobs?
Yeah, that's a really valid concern. It's something we definitely need to think about carefully. I mean, it's pretty likely that AI is going to automate some tasks that humans are doing now, but we also have to remember that AI is, it's a tool. It's not taking over the world or anything. It has to be used thoughtfully, right? So I think the future of work is going to be more about, collaboration between humans and AI, with each kind of playing to their own strengths.
Okay, so it's not about replacing humans entirely. It's more about, figuring out how to work together in a smarter way. What kind of skills do you think are going to be like the most valuable in this new world of human AI collaboration?
Well, skills like critical thinking, uh, problem solving, being creative, having emotional intelligence, those are going to be more important than ever, I think. Those are things AI can't really, replicate. So humans are going to need to be able to think strategically, come up with those, innovative solutions and manage those complex relationships that exist, within any organization.
It sounds like the future of operations management is going to be about, more than just like technical know-how. It's going to be about having like this blend of technical skills, human skills, and even, ethical considerations.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. And it really brings us back to that core idea we've been talking about this whole deep dive, that operations management is about creating value, right?
Mhm.
For customers, for employees, and, for society as a whole.
Mhm.
It's about finding that balance point where, business goals are aligned with doing things ethically and with a commitment to sustainability.
Well said. And, as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and all your insights. Um, this has been a truly fascinating journey into, the world of operations management.
It's been a pleasure. Absolutely. And, remember, operations management is all around us every single day. So the next time you order something online, you go to a restaurant or
Hmm.
even just, walk into the grocery store, take a minute to like appreciate that intricate web of systems and processes that, make it all happen.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into operations management. We hope you learned something new and, maybe gained a new appreciation for all those invisible forces that kind of shape the world around us.
Until next time, keep exploring.